Why did I write this book and what's my burden behind it? Well, in some ways, it's just an exercise in defining the church. What is the church? You think about a Presbyterian definition. The church is believers and their children. And a Congregationalist like me, or a Baptist rather like me, is going to say, well, I don't think that's the right view of the church. I'd give it a different definition. And that's an old conversation. And what multi-site, multi-service does is, like the Presbyterian argument, it gives a different definition of the church. And I think there's value to come along and say, okay, what exactly does the Bible say the church is? Because if we redefine the church from the Bible, we're actually picking a fight with Jesus, right? Why does this matter? Is this just an academic exercise to make sure our theology books are right? Well, no. The way we define the church, I know, impacts discipleship. It impacts us morally. So, does authority rest in the gathered congregation's hand? Or does authority gather in the elders' hands? Or does the authority rest in something outside of the congregation? Or does authority rest between multiple congregations or multiple services and this larger thing? Well, the place where you place that authority is the place where you place responsibility, right? Where you give people responsibility and duty to act. And so the way you structure a church, the way you define it, is necessarily a conversation about its authority, which is necessarily a conversation about responsibility, which is necessarily a conversation about discipleship. What is the average Christian called to do, the everyday church member called to do with respect to other brothers and sisters in Christ? Well, your answer to the definition of the church is going to dramatically affect that question. So that's one way it's going to affect our discipleship in the question of authority. I think it also affects our discipleship in terms of what the church is. Is the church the actual gathered family that we get together and sit around the dinner table together? Or is the church an administrative mechanism holding together multiple services, multiple sites? Well, that's going to affect how I receive preaching and how I take the Lord's Supper and how I practice church discipline and how I hold people accountable. So in all of these ways and more, I would say I wrote this book both to make sure we're understanding what the church is, its definition, but also because I think that's crucial to Christian discipleship.